Hello, everyone. This is W, host of the High Art on the Edge page, host of this podcast feature known as Surprise Cast. Today, I have some special guests with us in the podcast studio, Jaclyn and Andrew from the band Mahogany, and we will talk a little bit about their work. However, we are going to shine a spotlight on an artist that we greatly admire. His name, Peter Gabriel. How are you two doing?
Awesome.
Great.
So the last time we spoke was several months ago. What have you been up to?
I think we spoke last while we were finishing up some summer shows promoting our new single, A Scaffold. And yeah, we rounded out the shows in New York at Alphaville with our good friends from the West Coast, the Asteroid Number 4. Yeah, it was a fun time. We had fun audience there, and now we are back in Philadelphia finishing recordings before we do some more shows in the new year. And we're also almost sold out of our vinyl.
That's right.
So so we haven't really been pushing it digitally because we are selling it at the shows, and we want to keep a few copies for some other shows we have yet to announce.
Fantastic. Andrew, would you like to add anything to what Jaclyn just said?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're sort of deep in the weeds with the third album. You're catching us here in Studio A as per usual. Just taking a break, really, in between knocking stuff out.
How's that coming along?
Great. There's work that we have kind of nailed, drilled on really hard in these shows that is still not been released, and it's kind of solidified those arrangements. And then there are also brand new compositions that we're using a lot of, recently acquired tools. So higher degree of complexity.
I want to start this conversation about a gentleman, an artist, a musician, a social activist, someone that seems to be politically aware and has his pulse on the political climate all over the world. He's an innovator. He's a pioneer, a tech wizard. And of course, we know that he has some great help around him. And of course, I'm talking about Peter Gabriel. So for the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to take a deeper dive into some of his work and how it's impacted us as music fans. Here's my first question, Jaclyn. This one is for you. So when I say the words Peter Gabriel, what immediately leaps to your mind?
Activism, definitely. And if I'm allowed a few other words, electronic. There's just a lot of progression there that I, as a listener, realize Peter Gabriel was responsible for in terms of song structure, equipment, process. So that nature of progressive, not genre specific to progressive rock or anything like this, but more so on how to make music and record it and structure it and those types of progressive elements.
Do you have any political or social activism blood in you?
Yeah, I mean, Mahogany doesn't really go out of our way to say we vote this and we stand by this, but it's definitely enveloped in the lyrics of our music. I think if one were to sit down and read through a lot of it, it's not as hidden as you may think. It's pretty clear and evident how we feel for things we speak about in the songs, even the most recent work, but also the earlier works and connectivity. Of course, there's a lot of themes present there.
So based on what she just said, Andrew, with regards to Peter Gabriel's work, when did his music grab hold of you?
It got to be, those really crucial early teen years, because also that was when he was really reaching the zenith of his popularity in the States, busting through, in major ways, and got really, very deeply interested pretty quickly. And it was evident to see that he had, a lot of stuff on his mind that he had a really genuine and unique way of approaching. And that really, that was super relevant, I thought.
Yeah. Are we talking about his MTV launch, that whole time period?
Also, the thing is one of the things we love to talk about is sort of like albums that existed as a long-standing social phenomenon. And you can look at, like, especially in the 80s, there's a lot of great examples of these. And so, for example, something like Purple Rain or Thriller, these records, people lived these records for years. Right. And so Peter Gabriel's, real breakout is one of those records. And I think it was not even until 1990 where he played on Saturday Night Live doing In Your Eyes. And that just sort of is great, a great example of the evidence of the longstanding appeal and how it just kept rising and rising. People just, and I think that the song was used in that movie Say Anything with John Cusack, right? And people it just kept, this is what people felt, this is what people wanted. And they just kept returning to it, and they knew where to touch upon it. So there was that kind of thing. Also, really important around that time too was his work on the film with Willem Dafoe, The Last Temptation of Christ, which I happened also to see around that time. And it was, opened so many doors, especially because then you're starting to look at the credits and you see, Daniel Lanois worked with Eno and U2. And you're starting to draw these lines between who's capable of making these sounds and when do they, right, peek out of the rest of the mainstream and make themselves present. So yeah, there were a lot of nodes that were sort of like connecting and rising at that same time.
Were you familiar with his Genesis work before he became popular as Peter Gabriel? Big Time, Sledgehammer, that kind of stuff.
So, actually my father was a big fan of the post Gabriel Genesis records. And so those were staples in the car cassette player, right? And I think one of my high school friends mentioned in passing, right, one day when that he had previously been a member. And then so that sort of set me down, right, a little bit of a, educational path, realizing like, here's the similarities, right, of some of the work that he drew into his own career and where he began, right? So eventually, yes.
Jaclyn, I'm going to ask you a very hard question to even articulate, so bear with me here, okay? One of the things that I really appreciate about Peter Gabriel is that he seems to be able to connect to the human experience. So we're going to get very gender specific if you're okay with this.
Sure.
What you know of his work, how does it tap into your female spirit, if at all?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think with the whole message of getting into the world music, right? All of that, I feel like that's how it touches my female spirit. And just as someone who identifies as a female, that's how all of that comes through me. Whereas I don't feel the like metal sludge of like, oh yeah, this is man music, right? This is how we're marketing this from the big guys. It's for a man. This has lots of key changes and just there's a lot of like ethereal elements to a lot of the songs that I've heard at least, but Security, that album is definitely like it hits my tastes, right? Even the German version of it, which I was revisiting recently. So I don't know that it has to do with anything that I'm a female, but it's just that it appeals to me, right?
Yeah. So for you, Andrew,
Mm.
what does it provoke? What does it poke inside the male quality of yourself with regards to the sound, the lyrics, the way he performs on stage? What can you share there?
So there's a real sense of stoicism implied. There's also the layers beneath that, and desire for someone to really encounter some significant processing of experiences or situations. I feel like a lot of it has to do with scenario, but more of an internal landscape. So there's a bit of a psychedelic side to it, I would also argue, but it's technologized or modernized somehow.
Yeah.
To step away from the typical tropes of psychedelia, and then maybe that he's spoken on some levels at some points about like Carl Jung's experience of Africa, or this kinds of literary, inroads. And so there's that aspect to the academic side, that it somehow has that it does have validity, and complexity has validity in contemporary music.
Yeah.
God, I love talking to you too.
Okay. We
Likewise.
love the questions.
Who is this man? What actions of his have made an impact on me? Why? Peter Gabriel stands as a multifaceted artist whose work delves deeply into the core of the human experience. His exploration of themes such as power, love, greed, sex, good, evil, birth, and death reflects a profound understanding of what makes us human. Gabriel's music and activism highlight his commitment to truth and the pursuit of a more just and connected world. I respect this man's vision. Actually, I fully embrace it. His work often serves as a mirror, reflecting both the light and dark sides of who we are. Jump in the water with us.
Okay, let's launch into his work. And if you don't mind, I'm going to start this conversation by talking about an album that means quite a bit to me. And of course, this is the Melt album, if you will. Came out in 1980. Steve Lillywhite, the producer, well known for working with bands such as Dave Matthews, the Pogues, the list goes on and on and on. Great contributions from, of course, Kate Bush. Phil Collins was on here, Robert Fripp, Dave Gregory from XTC. So you name it, he gets it on there. I'm going to kind of break this down real quickly into bronze, silver, gold medal track. And for my bronze track, it would be in the first track called Intruder. And I love this song because when it first kicks off the album, it's this jarring noise. And it's like, it kind of shakes you to the core. It's got these eerie tones to it. It's very unsettling. And also what I love about it is kind of this thematic motif of this really powerful percussive drum work that is done throughout the album. And so this song, I think, is a great way to get the listener involved. Like, what you're about to go on is an aural journey. And a journey that takes you into the heart and soul of what he's trying to express and concern. Obviously, war, political strife, the need for human connection, all of it's there. That is my bronze medal track. My silver medal, yes, it may be popular choice, but every time it comes on the radio, and yes, I still listen to the radio, I will leave it on, and that is Games Without Frontiers. And I'll explain why. So when I saw him perform this here in the Bay Area, I believe he was on like when the GoPed came out. It was brand new, and he was riding around on stage with this kind of electronic hat, and you could see he attached the camera, like a GoPro camera, and you could see kind of through his eyes. I love the fact that you take this kind of simple metaphor of children's games and adults playing in a warlike manner and not learning how to get along with each other. So that's why I picked this as a silver medal track. It still resonates. And I love when he says, dressing up in costumes, playing silly games, hiding out in treetops, shouting out rude names. I mean, it's still very relevant in our political culture. And then I will end it with my gold medal track. There are anthems, and then there are anthems with a capital A. And of course, I'm talking about the last track, Biko. And this is a song I remember driving around in San Francisco when I had this on cassette, and you'd have to hold down the rewind button. I rewound this song so many times. Social justice, human rights, which became so important to his work. It's still a song today that I get goosebumps. He's done really interesting versions of it, and you can see this all over YouTube. You start out a song like that with kind of that tribal feel, and then trying to bring a communal feel to it through these powerful lyrics. It's still top 5 Peter Gabriel song of all time for me. And I've seen him twice, and when he performed it the second time, I mean, I just wanted to break down. It was so powerful. So those are my 3 picks, and that's how I feel about my first album, Melt.
September 77, Port Elizabeth, weather fine. It was business as usual in police room 619. Oh, be cool, because be cool. Oh, be cool, because
Any response to that? Would you like to do some of your picks? Go ahead.
I can definitely say that, so when you started looking into this a little bit more around the time that So came out, and initially after, there was a sort of a greatest hits or singles cassette that was released, right? And so this is how, like, if you wasn't really into buying the full length albums, then you at least had that on hand. And I believe 2 of those 3 tracks are actually on there. So Games Without Frontiers, though, had, I think, had seen some play on MTV or something like this, or was on the radio a lot. And so I was already familiar with that one. And I guess I always thought of it more in the context of like sort of a Lord of the Flies type thing, where children were trying to assume grown-up roles, but also within the context of romance.
Interesting.
Right. And the foibles and errors of the subterfuge that's inherent in that adult game.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right. So kind of almost a lament on like the frailty of interpersonal relationships when people are seeking love. I found it deeply profound. The other side of it with Games Without Frontiers and was the synth sounds in particular, the sound design of that track really blew people away.
Yeah.
It was just really difficult to imagine how he'd gotten to that point with those sounds. And people did a lot of, I remember friends of mine, and we did a lot of searching, trying to find interviews and such to figure out what synthesizers were used for this, right, for this composition. And that's when you started to understand, oh, there's you could buy a car or a truck, or you could buy a Fairlight.
Yeah.
One of the first sampling synthesizers, right? And that both he and Kate Bush seem to have, really legitimately sort of fallen in love with this operating system and how you created things with it, right? And it formed a very, strong vertebrae to all of this work.
Yeah.
And you come to find that a lot of it is, all of the concept of the Fairlight has found its way into modern recording with digital audio workstations. So the things we use every day, right? He was like the first to use, right, these kinds of devices. And then with Biko, that was when I started to look into it a little bit more as well. And you found out about WOMAD,
Right.
which is wild because like it was very hard for them. If you look into the history of it, very hard for them to initially organize a festival. There were times where it was going to go bankrupt. They just couldn't find anybody to support it. And a lot of other artists from the UK stepped in, to assist and be a part of it, including like Echo and the Bunnymen, just like a host of I think XTC was involved as well.
Okay.
So yeah, there was a sort of a, pretty pronounced microcosm that rose out of that as well. It's really that there's a 2 LP WOMAD compilation actually, and it's amazing, right? I urge people to sort of seek that out. I think it's live, and some of it's I think some of it's studio recordings. So.
Okay, good stuff.
Thank you, Jaclyn. Anything you want to share?
I would add also, if I had to swap one in to your list, which I love. I don't remember. I got to have that one on there. I just love the like 4 on the Floor. I think it is like at the very end part where that comes in. It just also like if you've listened to it like a lot, which I have, and then you eventually come to the music video, because right, like I didn't see these things on television as a kid, so I'm seeing it now, thankfully preserved on YouTube, and seeing the video afterwards, I'm like, oh my gosh, you can just picture this guy singing his heart out, right? Like there's so many emotions involved. As a listener, I can only imagine what he is going through to project this character, right? Because after seeing the music video, there's a theme and there's like theatrics involved where I feel like I'm on set somewhere watching, actors duke it out. Something is happening. Like I definitely don't want to be a part of it, but it's great to observe and hear. So that track really stands out on that record for me.
I'm glad you picked that one. And there are so many tracks, and I feel like before we move on to the next piece of conversation here. I feel like when I listen to this album, which isn't very often, but when I do, the production value of it, yes, we know it's from 1980, but it still sounds very fresh and relevant and most importantly, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still picking up and gathering up new seeds of sounds.
Definitely. Yeah.
Which I love about his work. Okay. I'm going to talk about my second album here. So when 120 minutes became my church, if you will, at 12 a.m.,
Yep.
I would stay up. I would record it. I would watch the whole thing. I'd go to school. I wouldn't concentrate. I couldn't wait to get home and watch it all over again. And my dad would say, "You're still watching that damn crap all the time." And I'd say, "Yes, Dad, I am." So in 1992, one of my favorite years ever for music releases, his album Us came out. And Digging in the Dirt was the first single, I believe, that came off that. And the video was so groundbreaking, like so many of his other videos, so just otherworldly. It struck a chord with me. I did not appreciate this album the first 5 listens. I liked it, but I thought it was good. And then I took a road trip, and it changed everything. And without getting too personal, I find that this is an album about emotional undertow that is so gripping. It is so captivating in a painful, melancholic way for me. And there's a great musical palette that is threaded within these songs. So with my pick, which was brutal to pick my tracks here, my metal tracks, I'm going to say my bronze pick is going to have to be Love to Be Loved. This is the second track off the album. And I love this song because there are 2 major parts to it. You have 3/4 of the song. It's kind of repetitious a bit in a way that it goes about in the arrangement. And there's a vulnerability. And that vulnerability kicks in the last quarter of the song. And it just floors you. So Love to Be Loved would be my bronze metal track. Silver, when you start off an album, Come Talk to Me.
Oh, yeah.
You get those bagpipes. I'm all yours. Go ahead. Here's my money. Come Talk to Me is such an important song on so many levels. The vocal work to me is some of his finest. The way that he performed this on stage with the telephone booth. Some may say it's cheesy. Okay, fine. I don't care. I love that simple concept. You have Sinead O'Connor on there, who I embrace as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's what I like to call a table setter. It's one of the best table setters for an entire album. Okay. And then my gold medal pick is the last track, Secret World.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
When you see this live, it even goes on a whole richer level and terrain. This notion of love, redemption is kind of imbued without. And as painful as this album is, and this song can be, there is still hope and optimism that once you go through these excruciatingly painful experiences, there is light at the end of this tunnel. And I think it's a great way to end the entire album. And like I mentioned, there is a live performance that came out, the Secret World show on DVD. I used to watch it over and over and over. So those are my 3 picks. Was not easy, but a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go for it. Anything you want to share?
So there was there's a lot going on with this album. I feel like, I mean, I was speaking of earlier. I was speaking of "Shaking the Tree," which was the greatest hits that came out right before this, basically, and it traced a path that was very sort of, very linear. I feel like at the point that he gets to this record, there's a lot of maturation that's gone on, and maybe it tempers the bombastic aspects that had occurred before. As a kid, relative to now, I should go back. I mean, I haven't reviewed this one as much as others. I should go back and listen to it now, because I know, like, Digging in the Dirt, and I'm really, big into Talk to Me, just because of the way that it's built. The construction is something that's familiar to me, and I like the people he brought in on that track. But this one is still like, maybe I need to grow into it a little bit more. Maybe I need to have the experience is appropriate to completely understand it. But it's actually been a while.
Mm-hmm.
May I suggest, if you decide to challenge yourself in that manner,
For sure.
put on some headphones. Yeah. Take in that real world experience. Jaclyn, you want to share anything?
I'm with Andrew on this. This one is actually, even though it's, I guess, the closest to the era in which I'd be a child to, like, go through this kind of stuff, I have to revisit it because it's not as familiar in my realm.
Yeah.
It's interesting what you said. You said you feel 1992
Yeah.
is this halcyon time for a lot of your favorite releases. For me personally, it's 1986 for some reason. Like, you have Victorialand, So came out in this time as well.
Yes.
Brotherhood, Pet Shop Boys,
Yeah.
OMD with If You Leave. There's a lot of, like, incredible stuff that comes out in 86. So there's sort of like a zenith right there that I sort of associate with Peter Gabriel's work as well on some level. So maybe that's why I just want the 80s back kind of vibe, like, and not so deep into the work that came later on.
Yeah.
So, got to get over that hump.
With the Us album, for me, I think it cemented my feelings, my regard to his prowess, his ability to come up with these universal themes and do it with some innovative approach, whether it be through videos, his concert experiences, his actual songs. I think he tapped into something so primal, so raw. I think also this album stems from his painful divorce experience. So
Makes sense.
his pain is our gain.
One of Gabriel's amazing features is his willingness to embrace technology as a tool for societal change. And like my favorite film director, Peter Weir, Peter Gabriel has consistently pushed the boundaries of visual expression, using innovative techniques to address societal issues and foster a sense of global connection. Whether through his work with human rights organizations or his efforts to raise awareness about concerned environmental issues, Peter leverages technology to amplify voices and bridge divides.
Now, the last one was very difficult because, the other albums before and after this, but I want to give credit to this album. And this, of course, is his last album that he put out, came out in 2023. And the Inside Out album, the I and the O, I think that's what it stands for. To me, this is a great amalgamation of all the sum total of his work. pushed into, so many tracks here. And you're going to get flavors of us. You're going to get melt. You're going to get up and all the other stuff. And I think what I liked with this is that, God damn it, he takes his time in between albums. But I feel like there's such payoff to it. There's such a richness. And for me to pick my tracks here I really enjoyed this experience because it was full on immersive, like get this thing on loud. So the first song I want to talk about is I.O., and that's the title track. This input output of the human experience, the human connection, which he's always trying to bridge because he's so aware of technology. He takes it one step further with that. And I love the sounds of this song. And I think that we don't give him enough credit for all the rhythms that he comes up with. Again, he gets great help. Mm-hmm. So that's my bronze medal pick. My silver would be The Court, more commentary on social activism, justice, equality, fighting for your rights, that kind of stuff. The orchestration, if I'm pronouncing that right, is wonderful. And sharp lyrics, very poignant, which he's known for. So check out The Court. And then, like Biko, not on that level, but like it, is this last track, Let and Let Live, a kind of a coming together track, if you will. Bringing people together, doesn't matter your political differences, your social difference, your skin color. This is a song about acceptance of people that you don't see eye to eye. And how do we just find that middle ground? And that's okay. We don't have to see red. We don't have to see blue. It's okay, because his premise is we share so many qualities that are so alike to one another. We want these similar things. So, and this got a big anthemic feel to it. Let and Let Live, last track. So those are my 3 picks.
I barely scratched the surface on this one. It came out, and I think I got like a few of the tracks online and that kind of thing. And then we got really busy with our own stuff. And so I kind of have a policy, right, of trying not to listen to anything too deeply when I'm involved in my own work. But the thing, you touched on something about how, like, he doesn't need to be, and I really appreciate this about the sum total of his creative arc. 2 things. You don't need to be intensely, ridiculously prolific in order to be an extremely significant artist. And I wish people would. There's there's probably some people who would benefit from this philosophy a little bit more, or that maybe the industry would. Take some time, iterate, right? Cook down your edit a bit more. Mm-hmm. Because I definitely abide by that. There was a time when I was at the Rock and Roll Museum or whatever, the Hall of Fame in Cleveland, for the Bruce Springsteen exhibition, and they had a vitrine with the table in his kitchen table in there, and then the stack of journals, right? And they had one open, and it had lyrics, and I was like, started to read the lyrics, and I'm like, this is almost Born to Run. It's good, but it's not Born to Run. It's just not right. And like, he burned through all these spiral bound journals, right? Trying to just cook it down to create one album, one 8-song album. And I think that people should return to this sort of way of working. And I also think that people should think about maybe more like, okay, if you're going to get started, well, how are you going to do that? Maybe don't go straight to an album. Maybe re-explore like good formats like the EP or a 7-inch single, right? Because your initial foray will be sort of suited for those formats. The grand statement, it does by needs possibly better off existing with wider periods in between. So I think that everything that he does on this level kind of like speaks to that. And also, you're talking about somebody who at one point was a purchaser. It was a major investor in SSL, solid state logic, the console manufacturer, right? The mixing desk manufacturer. So he went deep into the roots of the music industry, not just to start his own label or his own studio, but the technology itself. And like they were in need at that moment of an investor. He's like, okay, I'm on board with that, and helped them basically stay afloat, right? I think that he's not involved anymore, but he was for a long time, right? And so like when you have your armature, your mechanism in so many different places like that, it's like, oh, okay, well, what you look into it a little bit, it makes perfect sense, right? That he would take the time.
Can I play devil's advocate on that one?
Sure.
Okay. So there are people probably listening going, but I'm not Peter Gabriel. I don't have the funds to sit here and wait 12 years. I have to produce something, and I have to produce it and then push it out to the world and make maybe a modicum of money off of this. And it ain't going to be through streaming unless it's Taylor Swift or so on and so forth. So, and I'm not an artist, a musician by any means. I just push out podcasts. But I would be lying if I didn't say, sometimes I feel like I have to push out more to keep up with the machine.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been very careful on when I want to share these, how I share these. So what do you say to musicians who can't wait that long window time?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is it waiting per se, or is it just sort of honoring the timeliness of, of what it is you have to say, right? Like,
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I'm definitely someone who believes like if somebody has auspice and premise,
Yes,
you need to get it out the best that you have. You need to be really self-critiquing, not destructive, but helpful to yourself in terms of like, okay, well, I have 8 songs here, but like, what am I trying to say? Do I dilute what it is that I'm trying to do by being prolific for no specific reason? Right?
Mm-hmm.
The sort of attrition-based aspects of the industry right now, where they want you to continuously release tracks to fulfill some sort of spreadsheet initiative.
Yeah. Yes.
So I think that is not necessarily. Some people are great at that. Some people, if you did every song the same way, some people it's good for them to vary the production greatly. Some people it works well. So it all depends on your production line, right? And your general aesthetic. Is it meticulous, or does it involve research? With Peter Gabriel, it involves a ton of research. He's very also, respectful of where it is he's deriving. For example, the pulses that he's seeking and how he's trying to weave cultures together. It's like, is that, appropriate? Is it, when is it appropriate? And when is it appropriationism?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because the thing is like, he did this stuff for like, weaving in post-punk influences and stuff for like, we could say the first half of the 80s. And then people like Paul Simon jump in with Rhythm of the Saints, and they're accused of sort of jumping on this world music bandwagon. So it depends on how you like flow it in.
Yeah.
Right. Also is whether you're going to achieve acceptance with your influences becoming right pretty apparent. So I think that sense of subtlety and understatement, you're right. Some people just don't benefit from that at all.
Yeah.
It depends on how overt you or subtle your music really is and who your audience is. Right?
So Jaclyn, thank you, Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
Jaclyn, do you feel that Mahogany or have you felt that Mahogany should push music out a little bit more frequent?
Always. Yeah. I mean, this is one thing, in our work environment where sometimes we don't always see eye to eye. We have to like really look at the checks and balances of both people's views on this. Being that I'm in like a different age bracket, I'm in the media world, I see, well, we got to get this out. We got to get this thing. We got to do the TikTok, right? It's like, that's not part of our message though. So you have to take a look at like, is this, on brand for Mahogany? Does this fit our ideals? Does this fit our audience? Like now looking at, the most recent release, we're seeing the shift in terms of the demographics and listeners' ages, right? So we're seeing kind of the, a more mature audience that have been with us since the start, but we see this also fresh perspective of people who are finding out somehow, all the different threads that happen on platforms and coming across the new stuff and revisiting the old work too. So it's a balance of trying to not play to any specific game other than what feels right. And, the whole like trust the process, trust the journey. If you believe in God, I feel like maybe I just have to be patient with myself and and honor that, like, yeah, I don't fit the criteria of this type of artist who is supposed to be producing TikTok content and, getting more a volume out there, exponential rate that we just don't work at. A lot of the stuff you see in the room behind us is analog. So we also we have the ability, and we're grateful for that, to choose different methods where some people, to make their art, they are, relying on a couple different things, and that's their method. And that's why it takes all different types of folks to make this world go round. So
Yeah.
I think just, honoring that we have to meet in the middle on certain things with our Mahogany work and with how we represent it is key, because we can't really, if we go off course and try to play to a game, that's where it won't work. Because coming back to what you guys were just mentioning was, a thought had come into my mind where we had things ready to go, and then, the world changed in 2020, right? So we had a lot of things to consider. We were like, this is not the time. And for some artists, it was the time. It was their time to really be like, hey, we're out here. We're here to give you our art, whatever it is, music or digital stuff, because it sucks outside right now. So here you go.
Yeah.
But for us, it was like, oh, this is not the appropriate time. And instead we added a couple songs, and we've already mixed them, and there's things just sitting in our library ready to go when that time is also right in, the next year or so. So we do come together and see that the timing has to benefit the audience and how it feels to us.
I wonder if there's a paradox with the way you roll out your work and the way that you believe in your work. And the paradox maybe rests in the parking lot of integrity.
Parking lot of integrity. That sounds like a good album name.
Yeah. Love it.
Hey, maybe I have another career in something.
I know, right?
Thanks for the
you're
freebie.
You're on our writing team now here.
Yeah.
Dude, let's make it happen.
I swear that just came right here. But anyways, what I was going to say, the paradox being, from what I know of you two, your approach to your music is done with such, like Peter Gabriel, you're very meticulous. You want to honor the source. You want to honor the craft. And if there's a delay in getting things out, it may end up hurting sales a little bit, maybe disconnect from your audience a little bit, because it's like, okay, we've been waiting.
Yeah.
But on the other side, people like me and other people in the world who appreciate your music go, it was worth the wait. So do you know what I'm saying there?
Sure.
That's one of the things I really loved always about Peter Gabriel was his willingness to work with other people.
Yeah.
And to help usher in our entire other careers.
Yeah.
Like Yasu Dor and just a lot of other people that he's worked with over the years that I also ended up getting into. And when you go and you look up the discogs, right, on the stuff that I've been involved with, Mahogany really represents sort of maybe a third or less of the total productions that I've, stuff I produced, engineered, A&R, the graphic design side, just bringing things to labels, playing, arranging. So, I really love Peter Gabriel from the microcosm really significantly. influential microcosm. I don't know if you could call it a macrocosm that he was able to create. And I really do believe people need to start looking more at an artist and their expression on those terms. Because when you look at that, like then you start to see, oh, okay, well, cumulatively, I hold about an 8 out of 10 on Pitchfork for all of the productions that I've been in, helmed over the years, other artists that I brought to labels, and I played on those records and helped engineer them and that kind of thing, and that those were entirely self-supported and self-sustained, as opposed to being part of a structure that is gently sort of like filling in all the gaps here and there namelessly. Like we're completely unilateral in that regard, right?
Yeah.
We don't seek outside funding. And so every single piece of the situation we're bringing together, and it has to work a certain way, or we know it won't hit with the people who have stuck with us.
Yeah.
I believe if you play to anybody, you should definitely always seek, right, the response from the long-term listener and it's interesting to talk about streaming too, because in the sales of the record, the single, we found that our sales are almost evenly distributed across the United States in every state. Strange, right? And also a separate list of people who have nothing to do with any of the people we know online. They are existing completely in real time. So like that's very right. And that's sort of the kind of thing that you get out of getting a little bit more deeply involved, whether you have a very specific kind of vinyl that you seek, or on my end, since I also do a lot of graphic design and art direction, having that kind of sense of like, okay, this is an artifact. It's an artist edition. I can't predict how big anything is going to be, right? It's just like my first album or the second album. But I can do my best work for posterity's sake, because so much of what people listen to with music, sometimes it isn't discovered until 10, 20, 30 years later. So there's that aspect of it too, which is that you need to construct something, to last the ages, so to speak. And that's one of the things I love about Peter Gabriel is the true timelessness of it, outside of even aesthetic, right? Or the sound design. It's like, wow, this is really reaching something that you said yourself is very universal. Just if you talk about the pulses that he brings together from different cultures, and like what kinds of percussion sounds are preferred, right? Or what people are drawn to, and how to interlace those, right, with stuff that's familiar in the Western world, right? Without it seeming, sort of
taken.
Yeah, sort of like obvious or extra.
Yes, and I think he's aware of that. I think he knows whatever project he begins, the end result is going to be an artifact. It's going to be some maybe historical document. Maybe that's stretching a little too much, but I think he's pretty aware that whatever he puts out with his team is going to be quality versus quantity.
Yes.
Yeah. So is there anything else you want to share about your feelings, your sentiments regarding Peter Gabriel?
I mean, I think that, there's some artists that we touch upon, for certain reasons, for material reasons. There's like sound design or instrumentation. There's artists we touch upon for compositional reasons, complexity or the simplicity and how that works. And then there's the intent, whether that's the lyric or just the emotive capacity, right? And I think the thing that might also just sort of like hold people in reserve on Peter Gabriel not being more magnanimous for folks, in the way that, for example, The Cure is that it is so sobering. Overall it's very somber, and you have had to have certain, I would almost argue you would have had to had certain life experiences, or you would have had to take an extreme risks psychologically or emotionally in order to really start to find a home in that music emotionally. And so it's like, that's some heavy stuff, right? And he touches on all of those things. And for that reason, it's an extremely mature music. right? It's it's not soporific for sure, and it's not self-indulgent actually. So that's why it appeals to me pretty much in a sort of perennial way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Jaclyn?
Yeah, I think that all of the different characters that Peter Gabriel is able to throw down are really helpful as someone as a listener and just, that's going through life experiences, but also someone that's working on their own art. It's very interesting because, I'm listening to Whitney Houston and hearing how she can just throw all these words around and enunciate different parts, and just thinking about how these people come to these decisions, and knowing that also, it's not just a whim thing, that going back to the, it's okay to take your time and think about things like that. That whole notion is really important as an artist. And a lot of the work that I know from Peter Gabriel totally shows that to me. So, yeah, I think that covers it from my side.
Thank you. And a beautiful summary of your feelings with regards to his work. And I will end it on this before we play Guess the Album. I will say that for people that are fans of his work but have not seen him live, because he does not tour often, people complain about the ticket prices. That's all subjective. We live in a world where, it's what the market says, what we are willing to pay. I would encourage the listener, if you want to go see a show that is both entertaining, educational, it's hard to pass up this ticket, because even if you don't love his music, you're going to walk away possibly with this sentiment of, holy shit, what did I just see? This was so unique on so many levels. And Andrew, you just touched on it. Taking risks. He takes risks. This album, I don't think it sold very many copies, but that's okay, because there are a lot of risk taking within these songs, but in a live fashion, it even goes exponentially deeper. And I love that he continues to explore, how the hell does the human race survive through technology? Because it ain't going anywhere. And he uses it, and he poo-poos it, but he also embraces it. And I love that. He's willing to say, you know what? I could be contradictory. I could be a hypocrite. But yes, this is how I benefit from it. And this is what I want to do with it to bring people together. So as we touched on our last conversation, he reminds me of that wonderful director from Australia, Peter Weir, Dead Poets Society, Truman Show.
Yeah, right.
They both sit in these spheres of, you know what? I know how to play the big game, but I'm going to do it my independent way. And I love the merging of those two worlds. So we can sit here and go $100, $150 to see him. Well, that's your choice. But I would recommend it is worth every stinking penny, because it's an experience. Okay. Thank you for letting me go on about my Peter Gabriel rant there.
Oh, it's perfect.
And I do love his work, and I love what he stands for. And I love that it's made me question my own identity as a man quite a bit. But that's for another podcast. Okay. So we're going to end it, if you don't mind, with a game that I've been playing with my interviewees. And this is called Guess the Album That Is Sitting in My Hands. Speaking of technology, this is very technologically driven. Okay. Electronic sounds. There's a flood coming. Think animals. Okay. Those are your clues. Jaclyn, you get to go first.
Sorry, is the artist a band? That's
Yes, they are an important band.
okay.
Great question. All right, Andrew?
Oh, is it a German group?
No.
No,
Oh,
That's a good question. Question number 2 for Jaclyn.
they're not German.
does it fall within the 1980s?
No.
Or is it a band from the United States?
No.
70s?
Is it in the 70s? No.
Is it U2's Zooropa?
You want to make that your final guess? All right, here's the answer.
Here comes the answer.
Ding, 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 ding. It is Zooropa.
Oh, yeah.
Good job. All right, we were sweating bullets over here.
Yeah, I am sweating. Wow.
Yes. So
I didn't know Flood worked on that one.
he did. So there's more connection here. So obviously Brian Eno, big,
Yep.
He's worked with U2.
Long time.
Obviously worked with Peter Gabriel, Daniel Lanois, experimental sound. So that's what I was kind of going for in this album. And
Love-
this is an album that really shook shit up for them. I think they made it while they were on tour. They were just doing when they had some time to get into any studio. But it's a great album and it holds up beautifully. So yes, it is Zooropa. There's your animal clue.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, well, thanks for playing Guess My Album. So what's coming up for you?
And we are also delighted to share that we were part of the first wave of announcements for the New Colossus Festival in New York City. It takes place in the Lower East Side at a handful of venues. It's structured like a festival similar to CMJ, if anyone remembers that festival in early 00s. It really didn't dwindle until like 2013, I think, is when they stopped hosting that. So this has kind of taken its place, and it's amazing because New York really, really needs something like this. It's not just US based artists. There's a lot of folks coming over from other countries, even very far away places like Australia and New Zealand. So yeah, we're looking forward to that. That is in March. It's being put on by K9 Records, right?
Is one of the people involved, but there are a lot of folks that have been building this thing up the last few years. So it's quite a list of folks.
Yeah.
A lot of really new artists mostly, and we're just really fortunate to get involved. So yeah, that's the early March. So and then there's some other stuff that probably come after that throughout the year, actually for the first half of the year. But yeah, there's quite a production going on, obviously, here behind us. And yeah, album 3, something we've been working on for a little while now, but there's just as much, new material, so to speak, as there is the stuff that we've been kind of hammering at the live shows the last couple of years.
Fantabulous. Thank you so much for being part of this experience, this Peter Gabriel talk. And I'm grateful for our time. I'm grateful for your willingness to share with the listeners your sentiments about his rich catalog of music and doing it in a way that is insightful, it's articulate. And I'm hoping after people listen to this podcast, they can go back and check out some of his new and old work and really kind of understand what we've been sharing all along about his vision for bringing people together.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
I might also add there's a great sort of small documentary film that's easily available on YouTube about the making of Security. It was initially broadcast, on BBC at some point. And that's just super fun to watch him go through his process. Really inspiring.
I know what I'm doing after this interview.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff.
Yes, it is.
Jaclyn, Andrew, Mahogany, my name is W, host of the High Art on the Edge page, host of Surprise Cast. And remember this, everyone, great Peter Gabriel music is out there. You just have to keep your ears open. Ciao.